Whoa, and that was rather beautiful, Jerry Mulligan and My Funny Valentine, which happens to be a bit of a favourite of mine and a bit of a favourite of my friends, David Ades, who's in the studio now. I promised you at 12:30, and here he is, right on the dot, only running 10 seconds late. But that's my fault, not his. Hi, David, how are you?
Hello, Joe. Very, very well. Thanks again for having me on your program. It's a real pleasure to be here today.
Well, of course, the pleasure is very much mine and the station's, because we have an opportunity to release for the first time your album out into the sound waves and into the very hearts of people, because your music does evoke a lot of heart. And I'm looking forward to having a go. And I thought we'd just maybe kick off with the very first one, which is you've selected, track 2.
Yeah.
So could you tell us the title of it?
All right. The title is called It's Yours, Sibel. Sibel's a very dear friend of mine who gave me lots of support and inspiration over the last few years, and I thought I'd just make this a private dedication to her. And the song itself is have a listen to the bass line in it as well as the melody. There you go.
There we go. That's the clue, is it? Okay, let's go with this number, which is called?
It's Yours, Sibel.
It's Yours, Sibel. Dave. Fantastic.
Thank you.
It's yours, Sibel.
Yeah.
Now, what did you have in your mind? I mean, can I ask you that when you composed that?
Yeah, you can ask me, Joe.
And does it change what you had in your mind? I mean, is it the original idea that sticks with you with the title, or does it change when you hear it again?
No, it certainly changes when I hear it again, I think. I titled these things after I wrote them. So there wasn't a specific relationship from the music to the title. I titled them after I'd listened to them once they were written, so that I thought, well, that reminds me of this, or that reminds me of that.
Uh-huh.
And with that particular track itself, I just tried to, I guess, capture a certain laid-back mood, but with a sort of brooding intensity, if you like.
Yeah.
Maybe the feeling one would have walking down the streets of a very, very large deserted city at 4 o'clock in the morning by themselves, and having that feeling of power of their environment around them, and yet at the same time a sort of
it has a lot of energy. It's bursting with energy.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I really felt, that it was very image provoking.
Yeah.
And for me, I had lots of images of, I got a sort of a feeling of a little sort of Japanese feeling too in there too. Yeah, I did. I just felt a little bit, there was one section in it that that sounded a little bit sort of like Mr. Yashimoto, is that what his name was?
Sakamoto.
From Breakfast at Tiffany's. So I sort of travelled along on that thought sequence as I was listening to it.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
The lovely thing about making music is obviously everybody has a different way of hearing, and everybody has a different response, and what you may have heard, and then at one particular time I could play the same thing to somebody else and they'd hear something completely different, and it's always a wonderful buzz to be able to get feedback on other people's responses and their feelings from listening to
it. That's really what the main thing we've got to go on is how we feel when we listen to something, don't you? That's how,
absolutely.
You can intellectualize.
Boring.
You can. Lots of people do that. And sometimes, you can... I remember going to the jazz concerts when I was a young kid, and they were very popular in Perth. And they used to have these carpet concerts on Sunday afternoons. And, I used to go for the really traditional style of jazz to begin with, and then I sort of kept on moving a little bit further away from that. And even though I do like to hear some of the traditional jazz, I've moved more into a sort of a big band phase, like the big sound that you've got, and also into the sound that really does alter your moods. I mean, it's almost mood altering to me, some of the stuff that you listen to, and that certainly took me on a nice little visit to a big city, and I thank you for that.
Oh, wonderful.
David, is it very hard to compose, to drag out the original stuff? I mean, how original's original?
It's a good question. How hard is it? I think some pieces come easier and some harder than others.
But you're sitting in the bath and all of a sudden a line comes to you, or you're walking along the street, or what happens? What's the process?
Okay, sometimes it is as simple as that. Sometimes I may hear an idea in my head, and it will immediately suggest a whole piece, and the initial idea will set off the form of the piece and the mood of the piece and everything, and I can usually get it done quite quickly because I can hear it.
You can hear it in your head first.
Yeah. Then other times...
And do you do it in the same key, or is it always a different key, or what?
No, I usually sing it out loud. I'll sing what I'm hearing in my head out loud, and I usually check it with the piano and just find out what key I'm in there, and then write it down from there. Or the other way I work a lot is at home is with a 4-track cassette player, which is very behind the times these days. People have all sorts of very sophisticated computer setups that they compose with these days, whereas... what I use is just a 4-track and a little Casio home keyboard thing, which is fine. It does everything I need it to do. And I may think of a bass line first, or I may think of a rhythmic idea first, and so I'll record that onto the 4-track, and obviously I have 3 other tracks to put things on top of. And then I might come up with a bass line, and then have the bass line and the rhythm together, which may suggest a melody, and then the melody may suggest a harmonic sequence of chords.
I find that really interesting because, I mean, you're playing an instrument,
right,
which is a tune instrument. You know, like it's a solo instrument.
It's a single-line
and it's
instrument.
It's really interesting that you start stacking your composition from the floor up. Now, you know, that suggests to me that you're looking for the solid foundation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To rest your melody on.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, you might get a hint of the melody, but then you go straight to getting it structured, getting it grounded. Could you say getting it grounded?
Getting it grounded is a good way to put it. Yeah, I think the feel of any particular piece is very, very important. The actual rhythmic feel and especially the relationship between the rhythm and the bass. Because if that's really solid and it feels good, you know, if you feel like moving or if you feel like dancing to it or whatever, it gives you incredible freedom to write and also to improvise over the top of that too. So, being an improvising musician, what I've been trying to do in terms of composition is to compose particular environments so that it allows a good basis to improvise from, like a good grounding spot to leap from, if you like.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's almost like mental gymnastics, I suppose.
Well, sometimes I find myself sitting at that keyboard for hours, completely empty-headed. And I'll get up and I'll go and lie down or read a book and I'll walk around the house and I'll pay something down and I'll come back and sit to it and still nothing. And then after, 4 or 5 hours, all of a sudden...
It'll flow.
A phrase will come. Yeah, but I find that for me it's very, very important to discipline myself to try to write something without an expectation of the end result in mind. As much... I think about this in terms of improvising on the saxophone as well, is that it's much more important to be aware of the process, of the actual doing of it, rather than the end result as such. Do you understand?
I do.
What I mean, and in composing as well, for me it's very important to just not get too pedantic about it, so that if I have an idea and it starts to evolve into a composition, to just write it, regardless of whether I think it's good or bad, and regardless of whether I think that it works or not, and just finish it, and then to go back and say, well, that's something that's good there, and that's terrible there, and I need to get rid of that, and I can develop this more. But just to be able to write and put the I guess you could call it my vanity, my musical vanity away, put it away and just write regardless, and then go back and go over it.
Because you're fairly exposed.
Very, very much.
In this game, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, by the time we get through this album, we'll know a fair bit about David Ades.
I hope so. Not so much about me personally, but hopefully there's a little insert in the jacket there where I just hope that people can keep in mind things that I hold very, very dear to my heart, which is humanity and beauty and maybe some truth in there. Your truth, listener, your truth.
Yeah, that sounds lovely, David. Which one shall we play now?
Well,
it's like a lucky dip.
Well, the thing is that every track is very different.
So Life Flight on 7?
Yeah.
Do you think we should go for that?
Okay.
Okay.
And then after Life Flight, we'll put maybe something on really boppy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything to head up about Life Flight?
Oh, if I may.
Yes,
just
please.
Briefly.
Yes.
Life Flight was one of those compositions that did come all together all at once. Again, my friend Sibel, who was in my company at the time, was looking at a painting up on the wall, a Mexican wall hanging. And the painting had a picture of a bird sitting in a tree, and the bird from where Sibel was sitting seemed to be looking directly at her. And I'd had the headphones on, I'd written this melody, and I noticed Sibel was writing in a notebook as she was looking at this painting. And I played her the melody after I finished writing. I said, what do you think of this? Blah, blah, blah. And she thought, great, it's lovely. And then she said to me, what do you think of this? And she showed me this poem that she'd written. And amazingly enough, the lyrics of the poem fit perfectly. We didn't have to change one word rhythmically with the melody. So without knowing it, we were co-composing a song at exactly the same time.
Isn't that wonderful?
It was amazing, really.
People talk about astral flight.
Well, whatever.
Is that what they say? Astral flight? This is Life Flight by David Ades, and it's from his very, very new album called Bird on a Head, which is being released very shortly on CD, and we're getting to be the first people to have a listen here at Radio Eastern Sydney. And you're listening to Joanne Rowe, and the program is called Lunch Break, and my guest is David Ades. Let's away with Life Flight. what a beautiful last note. And what a beautiful, beautiful number.
Oh.
Congratulations, it really is lovely.
Thank you, Joanne.
Life
Thank you.
Flight. Now, tell us a little bit about the Vocalist, would you?
The Vocalist is this delightful young chap, 13-year-old boy named Christopher Taplin, and we had a bit of a search to try and find him. Originally, when Sibel and myself wrote this, we both had the idea of finding a boy soprano, and we had a lot of difficulty at first knowing how to go about acquiring one. I got in touch with the conservatorium. They couldn't help me. They put me on to a cathedral, St. Andrews? St. Andrews Anglican Church, I think.
Yes.
And there's a gentleman there by the name of Walter Sutcliffe, who's one of the principal bass players in the Sydney Symph, and he's the choir leader at St. James.
Mm-hmm.
And at first he was a bit dubious, a bit sceptical. He didn't understand what I wanted to do until I played him the track over the telephone one afternoon, and he was quite taken by the music, which I found from someone like that to be really quite flattering. And anyway, he said to me that he shouldn't have too much trouble finding a boy to sing it. Anyway, I sent him a tape of the track, and the day of the recording session, he turns up, and him and the boy and the boy's mother. And with all due respect to Christopher, he was this young chap, rather pudgy, lots of pimples as a 13-year-old boy has, glasses, stands there in the studio fiddling around with a microphone lead, and all of a sudden opens up his mouth and just this pure, beautiful sound came out.
And exciting.
It was really exciting. To hear something as you first heard it in your head, to hear it being reproduced like that with such perfection, was really it was a wonderful experience. And he did it in one take, and he sight read it, by the way, listeners, which if any of you out there know anything about music, you'll hear that the song itself changes key quite a few times. It's not an easy thing to sing, and yet the boy sight read it, which was rather phenomenal.
And the words of it?
The words of it, there's a bird in a tree and it's looking at me. Oh, I wish I could fly and pass it on by. But my feet remain glued to a soil that's been used by man upon man upon man. Which were written by Sibel Rowe, a friend of mine.
Fantastic. It's just beautiful. The whole thing really comes together beautifully. And the cover on the CD has got this gorgeous bird sitting on your head.
That's right.
So obviously it's got some glue on its feet.
Yes.
As it's sitting on your head there, David. It's a beautiful cover. And the music certainly is absolutely out of this world. It all comes together really well.
Thank you.
Haven't you got some people you want to say hello to?
Oh, well, there's one or two people like that. I know my mum is slaving away over there over at curry powders, packing them all in little packages. Hi, Mama. And people at Ruard, I think, if you're listening, hello. Grandma Jean, if you're listening. Suzanne.
Julian.
Hi, Julian.
And Jana. And
Sarah
and John.
Sarah and John.
And Emily may be listening too.
Oh, I am. We're going to have coffee soon, Emily.
Well, all these messages going via Radio Eastern Sydney. And, of course, the time is now 6 minutes to the hour of 1 o'clock. And I think we'll just have a little message to identify where this magical place is, what you're listening to, what station it is. I'll let someone else have a turn, let you hear their voice. And, David, you said that we should go to We've Got to Talk, track number 8, after this message.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave.
You're tuned to 8.